An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6, Chapter 26, Wedding in the Godswood. Resting a torch on the mount built into the wall, John stared ahead at the stone likeness keeping vigil over the sarcophagus. It was quite stylized, nowhere near resembling the beautiful, wild, loving woman that John knew was his mother. Every time he blinked, her kind face flashed in front of him, the warmth of her touch seeping into his body. The mother he never had. The mother who had indeed always been with him while growing up. Quite the irony if John thought about it long enough. Pulling off his glove, breath visible in a milky white cloud in front of him, John rested his hand on the smooth stone. "Mother," his voice cracked with emotion, "I love you so." A sudden flash of shame crossed him, for today was the day he married Daenerys, her sister-in-law. But it faded. She had told him to find her, ducking out of the preparations that had led him here. "I'm marrying Dany," he confessed to Lyanna. "My dragon, like father was yours. I know she would have loved you, and so would our twins. We have twins together, Mother. Can you believe it?" The stone carving was silent, provoking him to tears. "I need you, Mother. I always did. Why couldn't you be here?" "She is always here, watching you." John turned his head, slowly, to see Lord Howland Reed. His aging face crossed in a small, sad smile. "I knew you were here." Sir Barristan standing guard at the entrance. Striding up beside him, he joined his king in gazing upon the statue. "We all pass into the god's domain when we die, the good into the eternal warmth, and the wicked into eternal winter." Memory flashing back to the endless plain of vibrant green, John understood. "Fitting." The Lord Reed looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Fitting that the realm of the wicked is eternal winter, given that is what the Night King objective is for all humanity." The Lord Reed snorted. "Aye, quite fitting, your grace." The two continued to stand side by side in silence, torch flickering as they seemed to wait for the statue to say something. Anything. But there was only silence. "It is an abomination, the way they carved her." Her beauty and kindness deserved far better. It was welcome to John, to know others felt the same. "Sir Barristan told me that my father, Rhaegar," he clarified. John felt like he had two true fathers, the one who loved him and raised him, and the one that loved him and watched over him from above. "Wanted to expand the arts, to leave the realm a marble when he inherited brick." "I did not know that about him." Reed shifted his feet. "I did know is that your mother loved him, and you, loved the both of you desperately." He continued to gaze ahead as his king continued to stare at him, eyes soft on the subject, on memories of his long-dead mother. So close, yet also so far. Before she died, in the Tower of Joy. More like the Tower of Grief. The memory was hard for Howland. Lyanna Stark had been so beloved. She told Ned how much she loved both her dragons, how she hoped that at least one person in Robert's Westeros would know the truth about your father. John fought the tears in his eyes. He did not know why Lord Reed was telling him this, but valued it nonetheless. He craved knowledge of his parents, needed whatever information he could find to feel a special connection he knew he should feel for them. He hated him. Ned Stark hated Rhaegar, I mean. John's story was that of loss and pain. His father made a monster, his mother dying giving birth to him, one grandfather burning the other alive, and Uncle Father lying to everyone to keep him from being put on that path. It weighed on him every day. Howland continued. the lines deepening on his weathered face. At first, yes. But then Lyanna proved to him the depths of Robert's lies. He thought it was just hubris and arrogance, though. I think that Robert knew Lyanna had the run with your father, and let it play out anyway. John's hand gripped the hilt of his sword, wishing he could slice through the usurper and watch his blood soak the ground. In any event, with you in his arms and your mother's casket in the cart, his honour couldn't let it go. An eyebrow raised in confusion. What do you mean? Pointing to the unmarked grave beside his mother's, Howland placed his other hand over his king's shoulder and guided him to it. Did your father ever say he was buried here? One of the Stark ancestors several generations back. The statue broke apart in an accident. What did this have to do with anything? Shaking his head, Howland looked upon the rough stone. It was just Ned and I, all our comrades having died in Dawn, travelling north with you and your mother. I told him it would be next to impossible, but his honour wouldn't stop torturing him until it was done. A moment of silence hung in the air, before he continued. He knew Robert, what he would do with the body. We found it in the river, left in the muck to be eaten by the fishes. All of a sudden it hit John, staggering him. Shaking, he slowly reached out to touch the tomb. Who is buried in here? He knew the answer, but knowing was different from having your knowledge confirmed. Ned buried your father next to his sister in an unmarked grave. At least, in death, they could continue being together. Father! Flashing to the image of the strong man, tough yet with a loving expression for those he loved. John couldn't help the emotion threatening to consume him. Rhaegar Targaryen! Slowly, cautiously, he lowered his spinning head until it rested atop the dusty stone, where his father had been resting, ever close to him as his mother. Your father, my friend Ned Stark, he couldn't be here on this day. I just know, my king, that he wanted to tell you the truth. All of it. The king said nothing, though Howland could see he was fighting to keep control of his emotions as he rested his brow on the tomb. All that I owe him, I believe that this is the biggest. Just know that your entire family is here with you. Beginning to walk away, Lord Howland heard the faint sobs and quickened his steps. No man should have a moment intruded upon. The magnitude of it all shook John to his very core, crying softly in the presence of his father. Tear droplets ran down the dusty stone. Father! He ground out, whisper hoarse. You've been here the whole time. With Mother. Wiping away his tears, John stood, visualizing the man that had sired him. I'm marrying Daenerys. Making you proud, Father. I will be the king you wanted me to be. Running his hand once more down the stone, John sighed and made his way toward the entrance to the crypts. The last of the dragons, all together once more. A wince left Dany's lips as she jerked her hair to the side. Please, your grace, Missandei offered, gently guiding her head back into place. Stay still. You want your hair perfect for the ceremony, don't you? Not waiting for the answer, she reapplied the comb to the silver locks. Much as her handmaiden had tried to be gentle as possible, yet again did Dany feel the jolt of pain at the persistent tugging of her silver locks. Gods, is there any way you could just finish this? If you want this to be finished in haste, my queen, Shay replied, bemused. No one present knew whether Tyrion rubbed off on her or she on him, or if their personalities were like this from the beginning. It will require us to continue tugging on your hair. Dany simmered, but quieted down, gritting her teeth as the two women continued to yank at her hair. Whimpering beside her, a furry head leaned up to lick her palm. Exhaling, Dany slowly stroked Ghost's fur, calmed a bit by the direwolf's affection. When not with the twins, he was at her side for the most part. John wasn't jealous. No more than she was jealous of Rhaegar's bond with her king. In the corner, Sansa tried, and failed, to suppress an amused chuckle. The Dragon Queen resulted in a icy glare, only intensified her humour. Don't worry, Daenerys. Everyone will appreciate the northern style to your hair. Remind me again why the usual riding braid isn't an option? Another yank saw a withering dragon glare sent to Shae. The whore turned consort to the hand of the Queen, merely blew a kiss at her. Continuing, it was fine enough for the people of Meereen. You were at the head of a conquering army set to free the vast majority of them, remarked the Rose of Highgarden. You could have worn a straw sack and still have awed them. Dany eyed Marjorie curiously. Channeling your grandmother, I see. Her violet eyes danced with mirth. The other women around her laughed, much as the preparations irritated Dany. She was never the one for such formalities, and the thick northern dress made her feel buried in wool. Looking around her, this was what she wanted in her life. Joyful, light-hearted times. A family. One that cared for her and loved her in all the ways that Viserys didn't. Jon had given her one in the Starks, and she would love them for it. And there! Shae backed away, bowing with a flourish. All done! As Missandei placed a mirror in front of Dany, Tyrion's paramour clucked in at her latest creation. Radiant for the wedding party, yet positively scrumptious for the groom. He will be all mad with lust at the mere sight of you. Sansa rolled her eyes. She was just like this with me, so it isn't just you that she makes uncomfortably blunt. Picturing her brother in the throes of lust with his wife, her new sister, was not something she would prefer to imagine. Daenerys didn't hear them, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She had always known of her beauty, but Shae was right. There was a radiance sparkling from her. It wasn't overpowering, as many had commented of the effect of Cersei Lannister, but rather understated. Hair tied up in a simple northern bun, dress one common to weddings, but quite plain, and only a touch of rouge to colour her cheeks. The effect did much to temper the dragon within her. But the Queen still shone. Gazing in the mirror did bring forth the gravity of such a moment. I'm marrying Jon. He will be impressed, Your Grace, commented Missandei, smiling at her Queen's expression. Being by her side for so long, her long-lost love having been unattainable for so long, it was only natural for there to be a moment to think this too good to be true. As if sensing her thoughts, Ghost leaned his head up to squeeze his snout into Dany's lap, nuzzling it with a whimper. Broken from her reverie, Dany smiled down at the direwolf, as large as a pony, but still like a puppy in so many ways. Like her dragons. It's all right, boy. I'm not going anywhere. Ghost licked her hand and drew back, content. Now, I know that this is the time your mother would inform you what happened with a bedding, Shae interrupted, quite bluntly again, but judging from the sounds from your chambers, I don't doubt you need any further knowledge on what occurs then. Sansa groaned, Missandei smiled sheepishly, Marjorie chuckled softly, while Dany just blushed red with mortification. Normally she wasn't a prude thanks to her time with the Dothraki, but it was different with family. Must you? Mortification was written on Sansa's face. He is my brother, after all. And quite the handsome man. Shae licked her lips, none of the three women knowing where the teasing stopped and the female appreciation began. It is in my experience that Lord Tyrion began being the exception. It's the quiet ones that make the most fantastic lovers. Please stop. Dany covered her ears, grimacing. Not something I wanted to know. That did coax a laugh out of Dany. Fortunately for Sansa, a knock on the door ended that particular conversation. May I enter, Your Grace? It was Jorah. You may, Sir Jorah. As soon as the door opened, two small figures raced in. Mother! A bright smile curled on her face. Dany hadn't seen her children all day, and welcomed their loving hugs. My sweetlings! Kissing the top of their heads, she noticed all present were relaxed and smiling at the prince and princess. Even Shae. a normally sarcastic regard for everything, unable to resist the innocent charm of the twins. Ghost was the most enthusiastic, mouth open in excitement. "You look pretty, Mama," Rhaegar offered, kissing her cheek. "Is today yours and Papa's wedding?" Arya asked, grey eyes sparkling. While reserved with the experience and hardship, Dany recognised that same twinkle in Jon's eyes when he was happy and excited. Gods, she loved them all. "Yes, it is," she told them. A pout then formed on her daughter's face. "Why can't we come?" Northern weddings always occurred at night, under the stars if possible, a tradition as old as the first men. Dany kissed Arya's forehead. "You need your sleep, my sweetlings. If you want to be mighty royals, you have to grow and strengthen yourselves." But I'm not tired. Ah. The yawn that erupted Rhaegar's comment drew suppressed chuckles from the women. Sansa ruffled her nephew's hair. "Don't be sad, little dragon." Arya's nickname caught on. "You aren't missing much. Mostly boring adults talk, and the Northern Lords acting like stuffy idiots." Half true, weddings and feasts often had the most powerful people getting beyond the neck drunk. Boisterous and hence being idiots. Ghosts still keep you company. That perked the twins up, who immediately went to the fluffy white direwolf. Ghost, revelling in the attention, licked their cheeks and rolled onto his sides as they tickled his belly. It would be a cute sight for any canine, but for the massive direwolf it was amusing as well. "Your Grace, Maester Aemon sent me." Dany looked up at Ser Jorah, who looked quite emotional and trying to hide it. There was no other person than Aemon, the patriarch of House Targaryen, to officiate the wedding on behalf of the old gods. And Dany knew how touched Jorah was when she had asked him to give her away. With Aemon officiating and Ned Stark dead, who better? "The king is waiting for you." "I'll head over and make sure he's ready," Sansa offered, slipping out of the room. Lips curling till she was beaming, Dany kissed her children's head and stood. "Behave yourselves until the nursemaid arrives, my sweetlings." Confident that Ghost would look after them, now letting the twins climb onto his back one at a time, she stood and took Jorah's arm. "Shall we?" "Nervous, King Jaehaerys?" Balancing himself on the balls of his feet, soles coming down to crunch on the snow below. Jon glared at Arya. "I thought we agreed for you to call me Jon, Sansa. You may be my hand, but you're also my family." Normally not bothered by the cold of the winter, he rubbed his hands together. "And no, I'm not nervous." It was an obvious deflection. The composure following his moment in the crypts evaporated as the moment of decision grew closer and closer. Had it not been winter, Jon's brow and palms would have been drenched in sweat. "Please," Arya scoffed beside him. Sansa on her right. "If you were any more jittery, you would be bouncing." Watching him nibble on his lips, the old, unsure Jon she had grown up with returning, she punched him on the arm. "Stop it!" Wincing, Jon rubbed his arm. "What was that for?" "Stop worrying, brother. She's not backing out." "Dany can't stop looking at you," Rickon pointed out, rounding off the Starks. "It's quite gross if you think about it." Arya chortled, drawing curious looks from the older lords and ladies. He pursed his lips, that same bastard insecurity written on his face. Sansa reached out and clasped his shoulder. "She's not going to back out, Jon." A smile formed on her face, attempting to absolve Jon of his remaining fear. "You're the perfect match for a queen, and the perfect match for her." The redhead then turned to Arya, motioning with her eyes for the younger girl to say something. Shaking her head, a glabering look from Sansa made her groan. "Fine." Turning to Jon, she gulped. "I'm only going to say this once. You are quite good looking. Any lady would be lucky to scoop you up." His sister blanched, not one for flowery oratory, nor thinking of Jon in terms of attractiveness. That was when Sansenya, Rhaella, and Rhaenyra swooped down from the sky. Growing rapidly, they just barely fit onto the normal perches on Jon, their father feeling their heavy weight. They nuzzled him, chirping their love before taking off again. A chuckle left Jon. All he had to do was look around and he had the love and affection he had always missed as a child. He tugged his sisters close, glad they were here. Thanks. At that point, Sam hurried into the godswood, setting Gilly and little Sam among the other guests. He took up his place with John. She's coming. John managed to look out, and that was when he saw her. The breath was knocked out of him at the sight. Jorah holding her arm, Daenerys' breathing quickened as her eyes settled on John. Through her veil, she could pick out his fur cloak and leather direwolf tunic without a moment's notice. He's so handsome. She fought to keep her composure, for the sake of formality. Clad in a dress of the purest eggshell white, the northern custom was hewed to quite closely. Dany noticed various lords and ladies that would remain behind in Winterfell. Lyanna Mormont, Alice Karstark, young Ned Umber, all for whom the ceremony was hoped to appease. She looked back at John as her steps drew her right across from him, his warm, grey eyes that she loved so much coming into view. We'll have plenty of time to be ourselves tonight. In the soft glow of the many lanterns, light dancing among the blood-red leaves of the weirwood tree, Maester Aemond looked over his family. It was a beautiful sight around them, the simple, rugged beauty that the north possessed in abundance. Pure white snow covering the earth, intricate snowflakes glimmering like diamonds, fluttering to the ground all around them. The northern lights dancing in the dark, clear, moonless night sky, ribbons of colour heralding the most auspicious of omens. For the lights to appear at a wedding was a sign of greatness in all faiths. But the couple only had eyes for each other. Well, he cleared his throat. Who comes before the old gods this night? Smiling at John, heart filled with love, Dany nodded. I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, a woman grown and true of birth. I come to be wedded in the presence of the old gods. A queen, she spoke for herself. A woman in love, she saw all her titles. For John, she only needed to be Dany. Her heart caught slightly, knowing that it was her that John loved and was marrying, not her title. And who comes to give her? I, Jorah of House Mormont, the young bear said proudly, removing his hand from the crook of her arm. Sworn sword to her grace. And who comes to wed her in the sight of the old gods? Fighting tears in his eyes, a rare emotional moment for him, John reached out and took Dany's hand in his, symbolizing their new union. I, Jon of House Stark, King in the North. Being a northern ceremony, he was using his northern name. It didn't really matter to him, for Dany loved all of him. I take her to wed. Slightly breaking protocol, he lifted one of her hands to his lips and kissed it softly. Through her veil, John could just make out the twinkling pools of violet, the love radiating within them. Aemon felt his breath hitch, gazing upon his beloved niece. She looks so much like her mother. Rhaella would have been proud, bursting with happiness for this moment. Daenerys of House Targaryen, do you take this man? Her smile widened. I take this man. She almost laughed at the visible relief on John's face, as if I'd say anything else. From the moment she saw him, though she didn't realise it until later, she had become bound to Jon Snow. Preordained. Destiny. Her destiny. Jon of House Stark, do you take this woman? He reminded Aemon of his brother, Aegon V, the same slender looks and deep compassion for the common man. Jon resisted the urge to close the distance and kissed Dany passionately. That time would come. I take this woman, he breathed softly, never taking his eyes away from her. A small blush adorned Dany's pale cheeks at the intense gaze. Dropping his right hand, he kept his left out, Dany's resting atop it. I love you, he willed for her to understand the depths of his feelings. She saved him, brought him to where he was, even from halfway around the world. Gingerly, Sansa held Maester Aemon the special strip of silk. She had sewn it herself, 2 Targaryen 3-headed dragons mixed with the Stark direwolves. The union of ice and fire. As was the northern custom, Aemon loosely wrapped the cloth around their joined hands, binding them, symbolically and literally. In the sight of gods and men, I hereby bind these 2 souls together for eternity. And it was done. The marriage completed. Ice and fire united. Peeling her veil back with his free hand, Jon cupped Dany's cheek. Nuzzling it softly, Dany stepped forward, standing on her tiptoes, and bringing their mouths together. A cheer rang out from the Northerners. Queen in the North! Queen in the North! Queen in the North! A trio of roars filled the din, Balerion, Rhaegal and Edaron chiming in with their approval. Breaking their kiss, Dany stared into the deep amethyst of her eyes. I love you, wife. Dany melted into his stormy grey eyes. I love you too, husband. All else meaningless to them at that moment, they kissed again. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that because I love that. A beautiful wedding. That sounded glorious. I can really picture that in my mind. And more things to note. Aemon officiating the new generation of the Targaryens. Yes. 100% yes. And also Howland Reed coming to see Jon at Lyanna's tomb, revealing that Rhaegar has been there as well. That's amazing. That is really amazing. I love the idea that both Jon's true parents were with him as he grew up with Ed. That's amazing. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe, hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video, and remember to have a good day, night or whatever time zone you are in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!